Do you remember this boss? Yeah, I'm talking about the boss that is possible to beat with 4 Barbaras, Oceanid. Now, despite all the fun meme videos about our Hydro friend here, Oceanid, or Rodea of Locke, has quite the backstory under her. Today, my young bookworms, I will educate you on Rodea of Locke and explain where she comes from, how she got to where she is, and where she originates from. With that said, we begin. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications if you enjoy Tevat's facts and wisdom. Also be sure to join our community Discord where we discuss Genshin's mystery and lore with all kinds of other people. You can catch me on Twitch too, where I stream Genshin. Links to these will be below. Alright, with that said, let's open the Tevattionary and dive right into this. The Oceanid are a group referred to as the Locke folk. The Locke folk are a species made of hydro energy of the purest form. They all seem to be female and have a very strong connection to the original Hydro Archon. The previous Hydro Archon was known to be a very pure being, and thus these Locke folk entities were created directly from her purity and ideologies. Her goal for these Oceanid was for them to be spies for Fontaine, not in the way you think though. The previous Hydro Archon sent these Oceanids around the corners of Tevat to simply connect everyone together in the same way water does. Due to reasons unknown though, the Hydro Archon perished. We don't know exactly what happened to them, but I'm sure with further information, we can begin to speculate a little more. When the new Hydro Archon, or the Goddess of Justice, stepped in, her ideologies and ways of judgment didn't mesh too well with the Oceanid, who embodied the previous Archon's purity and way of life. From what we know about the Hydro Archon, she likes being the spectacle of the courtroom, judging all gods, but she won't mess with the divine, according to Dane. This new world that the Hydro Archon had created of laws and modernity seemed to be the exact opposite of the world they had seen with the previous Hydro Archon. The Locke folk grew dissatisfied with this way of life and thus decided to leave Fontaine, carrying the fragments of their dead god and wanting to keep the dreams of yesteryear alive. Perhaps they did this so that the love their god held for this world could be spread through the waters to all the land. What's interesting though is how all these Locke folk behave and learn. They gain knowledge based on joining water sources, such as springs, rivers, or even a person's tears. However, the longer they are away from Fontaine and separate from others, they lose that knowledge and have to restore it over time. A Locke folk's emotions are also very different than that of a human's. In the book Heart of Clear Springs, it depicts a young boy who spends a lot of his life near his spring. In that spring resides a spring fairy Locke folk. The spring fairy had lost all of her knowledge due to her being lonely. The boy and her slowly start to get close over time, and eventually the boy falls in love with this spring fairy. She would purify his tears and thus learned more about the world outside of the spring she resided in. The fairy would also enter his dreams as a child. In those dreams, she told the boy all about her beautiful sapphire blue hydro realm and sang of being exiled inside for separation and belonging. As the boy grew up, she would continue to sing for the boy until one day she left. She fled because she was incapable of being able to love. Oceanid can't love others, and any being will drown in their pure water essence. This state of being could definitely have to do with the impact created from the previous Hydro Archon. This pure being loved with all her heart and wanted to connect everyone together through water. The Oceanid are not able to truly get over the death of their beloved god. Their homeland's way of life had been changed drastically in front of them, and not being able to live the way they were used to next to their god tragically hurt them, causing them to leave Fontaine in complete separation. Now, I believe everything that went on with the Oceanid and the current Hydro Archon can actually be linked to Greek mythology. Oceanid in Greek mythology are the daughters of the 2 titans, Oceanus and Tethys. The Oceanids are all female. They also have brothers known as the Potamoi. Essentially, the Oceanids leaving Fontaine can relate to the Titanomachy. The Titanomachy is the war between the Titans and the Olympian gods. Zeus and the Olympian gods fought and overthrew the Titans who came before them. In Genshin's case, the new Hydro Archon being the new god, and the Oceanids being the Titan. The previous Hydro Archon could be a reference to Oceanus and how Titans were representatives of a more ancient world. The Olympians were in more favor of a new world filled with modern civilization. The Olympian gods also have titles very similarly to some Genshin gods we hear about. It comes from the idea of old gods being forgotten, and the ways of previous living had been forgotten in favor of living a more modernized life. It's moving away from a raw earth energy spiritual way of life towards a life of socially constructed laws, technology, science, and knowledge. This sort of newly modern world aspect in form of mythology can also be brought over to the other Archons. With Barbados and Mondstadt, he disappeared, letting the people have their freedom from his rule. Rex Lapis passed the torch to the humans, allowing them to rule themselves. Raiden A has her form of eternity changed and starts to think back to her sister Makoto's idea. Then we have the other two Archons, being the Goddess of Wisdom taking over for the God of Woods, and the Goddess of Justice taking the place of the previous Hydra Archon. The two oldest Archons who survived the Titanomachy of Genshin are Rex Lapis and Barbados, but had their own agendas, views, and plots that left humans ungoverned. These were the surviving Titans, while the new Archons, like the Dendro and Hydro, are reflected as the Olympian gods. Well, that wraps up Oceanid and why they are interesting and an important part of the world building. This game is also surrounded with tons of mythology references piling in from so many different cultures, and with that mythology, we get to see how this game is shaped. I still wonder what happened between the Hydra Archon and the Divine though. She seems to be a judge, so we'll see how that goes. Let me know your thoughts on that, as well as how cool Oceanid is in the comments below. With that said, I think I'm going to close the book. Thanks for opening the Teyvattionary, and with that said, I will see you in the future for more Genshin Impact content and lore.